Hello viewers, hope you are all well. Before I begin, I would advise all my viewers to check links of valuable resources related to CSCP exam in the description box of my video. Secondly, I would recommend watching the video till the end as I have included a 15-question quiz on the topic. This quiz will assist you in assessing your comprehension of the subject matter. Drawing from my personal experience, I found that quizzing myself on various topics while preparing for my CSCP exam greatly contributed to my comprehensive understanding and mastery of the material. As a result, I have chosen to incorporate quizzes at the conclusion of these topic lecture videos. Today, the topic of my discussion is forecasting principles and process. Now, before starting this topic, we should know what is forecasting. Forecasting is the business function that attempts to predict sales and use of products so they can be purchased or manufactured in appropriate quantities in advance. Or you can say forecasting is a process by which a projection of the future is made. It is commonly used in business to predict market growth, profitability, sales, etc. Marketing and sales teams are usually responsible for making forecasts. But supply chain managers heavily depend on these predictions for various aspects of their operations. This includes making sure there is an appropriate amount of warehouse space and transportation services available, among other things. It is crucial for supply chain managers to understand how these forecasts are generated and be aware of potential issues that can arise. This is because an inaccurate or unreliable forecast can lead to numerous incorrect decisions within the supply chain, ultimately incurring significant costs. The purpose of forecasting is to engage in demand planning. What is demand planning? I have broken down the definition of demand planning into these points so that the concept can be easily grasped by my students. So let's discuss. Demand planning. It is a combination of statistical forecasting techniques and judgment. It can be aggregated by product family, geographical location, product life cycle, etc. to determine an estimate of consumer demand for finished products, service parts, and services. Numerous forecasting models along with judgment from marketing, sales, distributors, warehousing, service parts, and other functions are combined to plan demand. In order to minimize forecast error, actual sales are compared with forecasts provided by various models and judgments to determine the best integration of techniques and judgment. Now let's discuss what are the consequences of producing more or less. If you will produce more than the demand, you can face financial losses or even more severe consequences. On the other hand, if customer orders surpass your supply capacity, it could result in customer frustration, leading them to choose your competitors instead. Now let's discuss what is demand forecasting. Simply put, demand forecasting is forecasting the demand for a particular good, component or service. Even make-to-order business models need to have sufficient capacity and components prepared prior to receiving customer orders. For example, what if you receive an order for 100,000 units which should be delivered in 10 days, whereas you can only produce 10,000 units in 10 days as per your plant capacity? Why forecasting is important? Forecasting demand is a necessary part of business planning. You have to have some guidelines when deciding how much product you are likely to sell and how much therefore you need to produce. I believe my students must have developed a fundamental concept of forecasting. Therefore, now we will discuss forecasting principles. So the first principle is forecasts should be based on demand rather than orders. Forecasts should rely on actual demand rather than solely on customer orders. While customer orders are often the initial basis for estimating demand, they should not be the sole consideration. Orders from intermediaries like distribution centers, distributors, and retailers may include quantities ordered for reasons other than the actual demand, such as anticipating shortages. It is crucial to account for sales that could have happened if stockouts hadn't occurred. Additionally, adjustments need to be made to customer orders to accommodate returns. Let's discuss principle number 2. Forecasts are almost always wrong. Forecasts, regardless of their complexity or the expertise behind them, are inherently imperfect estimates of the future. Even if every potential customer for a new product were surveyed, there would still be some level of error in the forecast for individual sales or shipping locations, as circumstances and preferences can change. Therefore, it is essential to regularly review forecasts. If forecast errors become too significant, it is time to re-evaluate the forecasting techniques. The uncertainty in forecasts can contribute to the bullwhip effect, where demand fluctuations at the retail level get amplified in orders up the supply chain. When forecasts consistently miss the mark, it leads to greater variation in orders as you move up the supply chain. Traditional forecasting often assumes that each sales period should result in predetermined percentage increase from the previous year. But this is more of a business objective than a true forecast. Forecasts should strive to be objective and data driven, avoiding bias stemming from predetermined goals. Let's move on to another principle. Forecasts should include an estimate of error. Forecasts should incorporate an estimate of their expected error, similar to how opinion polls provide a margin of error, example 40% favorable rating plus or minus 3%. This error estimate is derived from statistical analysis of the variation in demand around the average demand. If you notice that your forecast error becomes unacceptably large over time, it is a sign that you should either enhance your forecasting methods or adapt your supply chain to handle greater uncertainty. Additionally, error estimates should be expressed in monetary terms so that you can prioritize addressing the errors with the highest financial impact. Forecasts are more accurate for groups than for single items. Forecasts tends to be more accurate when dealing with groups of items rather than individual ones. This improved accuracy is based on the assumption that forecasts for each item within a group have an equal chance of being either too high or too low. The high and low forecasts for different items within the group tend to balance each other out, especially when dealing with larger groups. This phenomenon relies on a principle known as risk pooling, where individual risks are combined into a pool. The overall risk for the pooled group tends to be less than the average of all the individual risks. This concept can also apply to the centralized management of inventory. For example, a retailer is more likely to accurately forecast demand for all types of blue jeans rather than for a specific brand like loose fit Levi jeans. Similarly, a hospital can better predict the number of surgeries in general as opposed to the number of very specific procedures like quadruple heart bypass surgeries. Likewise, a manufacturer can enhance production forecasting accuracy by consolidating the demand forecasts for all customers ordering the same product, such as all wholesalers ordering a particular brand or style of blue jeans. This improved forecast is advantageous if the manufacturer can send bulk orders of these jeans to a distributor serving multiple customers. Any forecasting errors, whether they are on the low side for some customers or on the high side for others, tend to balance out since they are all drawing from the same supply. This concept is another aspect of risk pooling. Although detailed forecasting is still necessary, especially for short-term predictions, broader group-level forecasting provides a more stable foundation for making supply chain decisions. There is a concept of mixed forecast. Let's discuss what it is. Forecast of the proportion of products that will be sold within a given product family or the proportion of options offered within a product line. Even though the appropriate level of units is forecasted for a given product line, an inaccurate mixed forecast can create material shortages and inventory problems. Forecasts for the near term are more accurate than for the long term. Forecasts tend to be more accurate when predicting the near future compared to the distant future. The longer the forecast horizon, the greater the likelihood that unforeseen factors and changes will disrupt the accuracy of the predictions. This principle is akin to the way lenders often charge higher interest for long-term loans than for short-term ones. For instance, if you create a detailed forecast for a specific item over an extended time frame, the potential for significant errors in that forecast increases. However, when the forecast horizon is very short, the chance of making substantial errors diminishes significantly. In terms of reviewing forecast accuracy against actual results, it is important to align the evaluation with the appropriate time horizon. Long-term forecasts are typically assessed on an annual or quarterly basis, Medium-term forecasts are reviewed monthly and short-term forecasts are scrutinized weekly. Additionally, in addition to periodic reviews, reducing the lead time required for items can also help shorten the forecasting horizon, thereby enhancing the accuracy of forecasts. Now let's discuss forecasting process. Here are the steps of the forecasting process. Number one, determine the purpose of the forecast. For example, to determine the manufacturing or purchasing targets, capacity or service staffing. Determine the level of aggregation and what will be forecasted. Specify units of measure and total sales, product family, product or stock keeping units, SKUs. Determine the time horizon. Specify a short, medium or long-term forecast and the planning bucket, example by week, by month or by year. Visualize the data. Map any available historical data on a graph to see if they have obvious trends or seasonality. This will help when selecting the forecasting method. Choose the forecasting method or model. You can choose qualitative or quantitative methods or both. For quantitative methods, decide if a time series forecast or an associative forecast would work better and choose a subtype. If historical data are available and the trend appears to be relatively steady, a time series forecast is a good choice. If no data are available or the trend changes frequently, it may be best to develop an associative forecast based on elements that appear to be driving the changes in the trend. Prepare the data. Gather data to be used as forecast inputs. If the visualization showed strong seasonality, remove this temporarily using deseasonalization. Test the forecast using historical data. If historical data are available, prepare a forecast for a few periods back from the present and compare the forecast result to the actual historical results. Forecasting using multiple methods to find the most accurate one. At step 8, you have to forecast. After making any necessary adjustments, use the model. If seasonality was removed from the data, add it back in. Any qualitative adjustments would be made at this point. After that, perform sales and operations planning. The result is that demand side, supply side and financial professionals arrive at a single demand forecast that everyone agrees to use. This is called a one number system. And at last, periodically review and improve models for accuracy. Monitor and control error levels and continually improve models. Viewers, if you find value in this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and pressing the bell icon. Thank you.